What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
I'm Shredlord.
Jammin Jon.
Miller.
And we are back with another discography ranking, and this time we are going over the mighty Bay Area thrash fucking violent motherfuckers, Exodus.
Woo!
This is one that has definitely been requested a lot, and definitely one that I've been wanting to do just because Exodus just knows how to fucking bring the hammer down, give you great riffs, high energy, lots of lessons in violence, and pretty much a Bay Area staple. In fact, I'd say like all the fucking Bay Area bands are somehow attached to this.
Even though they're not mentioned in the Big Four.
There's always that debate. Like, I mean, Testament could be one of the Big Four too. Like, I mean,
it needs to be like a Big Seven.
But you have to eat one of the Big Four right now. And which one do you eat? Like everyone says, oh, Anthrax or Slayer's retired now, and they've given up that part. Or Metallica, just because Metallica.
Hey,
first four albums. But they're always mentioned when it comes down to classic thrash because they are a flat-out badass band, and we're about to get into this shit. So this band formed in 1981 by guitarists Gary Holt, Kirk Hammett, vocalist and spirit animal for thrash in general Paul Bailoff, bassist Jeff Andrews, and drummer Tom Hunting. Now these guys, or kids at this point because they started out pretty young, were all heavily influenced by a lot of like early heavy metal bands, namely Motorhead, Iron Maiden, Raven, but also punk and hardcore, especially Discharge and The Exploited. Now with this lineup, they recorded two demos, their 1982 demo and their 1983 demo, Die by His Hand. And in 1983, we have our first big lineup shift. Kirk Hammett took the vacated spot in Metallica after they just pretty much put Dave Mustaine on a bus and said, best of luck, bud. And became the lead guitarist of Metallica. And bassist Jeff Andrews left to join Possessed and start pretty much paving the groundwork for a wonderful thing called death metal. Now they were replaced that same year by guitarist Rick Hunold and bassist Rob McKillop. And that lineup recorded the pretty much legendary Lesson in Violence demo in 1984, which gained a lot of traction in the Bay Area. They were already pretty much like the Bay Area thrash house band. Like, people kind of knew more about Exodus, at least in the San Francisco circles, more than they knew about Metallica at that time. But Metallica would fucking explode, and Exodus would pretty much just kind of maintain the groundwork.
And for those of you that don't know, demos are these really old things that bands used to put out 3, 4, 5, 6 songs to let everybody know what they sounded like and how badass they were.
Tape trading.
I just felt like I should interject that because most of you probably... No, I'm kidding. You should know what the hell a demo is, but it's still old as shit.
Yeah, it was before singles.
Yeah, you had to mail people your demo instead of just, like throwing them.
And usually it was recorded on like a 4-track.
I mean, tape trading seems like it's a thing again, but anyway.
CDs in the windshield. I
got a couple of
the little
those.
pamphlet of your next show.
So not long after this demo started circulating in 1984, they were signed to Torrid Records, which would later in 1985, namely April 25th, released their first album, their monstrous fucking debut, Bonded by Blood. This is my number one. It's all downhill from here, but there's still tons of great albums. But holy shit, how do you match up with this? Honestly, even compared to the debut albums of, I would say almost all the Big Four, I think this one might be even better. It is flat out vicious. The riffs are tight. They're fucking clever. They're aggressive. And you have this maniacal fucking frontman who sounds like a raving lunatic.
He was.
Threatening to hurt you in multiple different ways, especially if you're wearing a Poison shirt. Why the fuck do you show up in that? That's stupid.
He'll take it from you. He will
Cut
take
a strip,
it from you.
put it around the wrist, I own you. Now, there were some issues, unfortunately, with this release. It was supposed to be released much earlier, but the label kind of backlogged them. And honestly, coming out in 1985, thrash had already sort of evolved at that point, and it does sound kind of dated, but honestly, if this had come out like 1983, like 2 years earlier, same year as Show No Mercy and fucking Kill 'Em All, it would have fucking blown the doors off like even more. Like this would have been even more talked about than it already is, and it's already pretty well talked about. But yeah, I absolutely love this album. Title track, Strike of the Beast, is a guaranteed pit churner. Like, people will fucking die.
We've seen it.
Yeah, well, not people dying. I think they all got out all right.
Everyone seemed to make it okay.
Yeah, they're all right. They're fine. They're fine. A Lesson in Violence, Deliver Us to Evil. Just great fucking songwriting, and what a fucking establishing fucking presence right away.
I also had this at my number one. Man, look, I think this record could go toe-to-toe with half the thrash albums released today. Like, the production on it is killer. The riffs are absolutely insane. Paul Bailoff is a goddamn madman. I really became a fan of Tom Hunting, too.
Tom's a beast.
Yeah, during this whole thing, man.
He's a really nice guy, too.
I didn't know about Tom Hunting prior to this ranking. I'd never really been into Exodus prior to now, so... yeah, A Lesson in Violence. I like the acoustic work in No Love. The lead work in Piranha is nasty. Again, this record whoops ass. What a hell of a debut for 1985. The recording quality alone.
Yeah.
This is also my number one album. This is a thrash hallmark album. Regardless if it came out a year or two later than it should have, the impact is still felt today. Recently, Necrotic and I were lucky enough to go see Exodus, Death Angel, and Testament, and I mean, they play songs from this album still. When people talk about thrash and the origins of thrash, this album constantly comes up.
Yep.
You cannot have a discussion about thrash without this album coming up, and there's a good reason for it. Number one, have to give respect to it.
I gotta follow that. Number 4. Jesus Christ.
What did you do, Miller?
I know, right? Well, these boys have aged well for me.
Sure.
And it's probably because I fanboy, and it's like every album's the best album. So, but I really had to think about it. And 4, because I don't care for the vocals too much, but the songs are killer. Strike of the Beast is like the perfect 80s thrash song. There's like, if you were to have a encyclopedia metal, not the official one online, but if you were to look through a book, it would have this song. It's like an example of what it is. Metal Command, I love that. Lesson of Violence, you guys have all talked about that. It's only number 4 because I like other ones better. I love this album. It's one of the best albums.
Yeah. Fucking, like, literally every song I could have gone about every song because they're all fucking good. So needless to say, despite this being released a little bit later, this did make a splash. They started touring relentlessly and ended up signing with Combat Records, which actually reissued their debut, which they didn't have, like, the best relationship with Torrid Records. Now, well, back to Bailoff. Bailoff was a fucking animal. Like, huge stage presence, but, man, he liked to party. He lived the thrash life. I don't know anyone in my life that has ever thrown a party just to destroy his own shit in his own house, but that was Bailoff. But unfortunately, with the band, they were kind of having issues with him. His lifestyle was fucking, well, fast and reckless, and, you know, it kind of started great on him. Plus, when it came down to them writing new material, he wasn't necessarily adapting very well to it. Like, I've heard different reasons as to his firing, but Bailoff was fired not long after they got back from touring. So they needed a new singer, so they actually approached one Steve Zetrosousa, who was actually running the band The Legacy at the time, which would end up becoming Testament when they found Chuck Billy as their new frontman. So yeah, kind of a cool little interweaving of a band that we ranked before, and that's also awesome.
It all worked out.
It all worked out. Now, the new album would actually feature a fair amount of Bailoff's lyrics. He had actually did a fair amount of writing too. And once again, because their relentless tours, they fucking kind of had to delay this one because they were on the road and they couldn't get into the studio to finish it. But on October 7th, 1987, they released Pleasures of the Flesh. This is my number 9. Now, a while ago, I did a whole video about sophomore slumps, and I left this one out because this ranking was on the docket, and I figured I could talk about it here. This is a good album, but following a beast, a genre-defining fucking debut album, this one doesn't hold up as well. Definitely more polished production. They actually had Sylvia Massey do the production, which she would become much more well-known with her work with Tool, namely Undertow, and she also worked with Red Hot Chili Peppers and System of a Down. But this new polished sound I kind of had issues with, namely the drums. The drums kind of sounded odd, like I didn't like the sound of the snare.
The kick drum was buried.
And, well, at this point you started hearing Gary's tone. Like, Gary's tone, that big mega crunch, and I don't know if they mixed it quite as well, but the songs in here are good. They're trying to broaden their sound a little bit more. Zetro, definitely a different singer, and he has, you know, his own unique take, but also, like, in terms of singing in key, it was something that Bailoff might not have been as good at. So they were able to do more musically. It's just, it didn't match the intensity. There's some great songs here. I love Paradise. I think the title track is good, except for that goofy tribal intro, which is just kind of there.
Jungle Feel.
Yeah, it's, I don't know, it's just odd. There's a song called 30 Seconds. It's 42 seconds.
Liars.
It's also pointless.
It's beautiful, though.
No, it's just kind of like an interlude. Seeds of Hate, great song. But they also have songs like Chemical, which is kind of a dud. But it's a good album. It's just, again, where it's following. Like, this was, kind of a transitional album. They were still kind of figuring out the new direction. But yeah, number 9, not a terrible album. It's just a little bit lower for me.
This is my number 7. This album not only has the misfortune of coming after a very strong album, but it also has the misfortune of coming right before another strong album, in my opinion, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So because of that, to me, it gets lost in the shuffle a little bit. I think for Steve, it was a decent debut, but with some production gaffes and the overall writing, I just feel like this was an okay record, but not very memorable or anything that you're going to be like, man, I need to hear this song right now. It just kind of falls somewhere in the middle for me.
I had it at number 2. Actually, most of the stuff that you guys didn't like, I found entertaining. The harmonies in Chemical. I actually liked the little tribal jungle opening. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I was stoned when I listened to this, but I thought it was great. Not immediately sold on Zetro, to be honest. But yeah, Seeds of Hate is a fucking spectacular song. The last 60 seconds, balls out for Harambe. Riffy as fuck. I think it was a good way to follow up the album before it. That's my take.
And he's sticking with it.
Yep.
I had an 8, so kind of similar amongst us 3, and I kind of where Shred is on it. Till Death Do Us Part, love the groove in there. It does kind of keep dragging a little bit for me in that. And then Brain Dead, I like that song. I dig that tune. It hits really hard with the groove and the bass. That song, the mix works well for some reason. That song in particular, I don't know what it is about it, but otherwise the mix fails for me.
It's just kind of odd sounding. Like, you're going from that really organic sound on the first one to like, let's tweak some knobs unnecessarily.
Yeah, I was going to bring up the kick drum. It's buried. Yeah. Yep. And maybe because Brain Dead, everything's so dun, 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 on the nose that the bass, because the bass guitar, when it's singled out, doesn't sound that good. But when it's layered with the non-existent kick and everything's on boom, 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 it all sounds really good when it's like together. But it's Exodus. It's whole. It's just music. So
I thought the guitars were a little thin too.
Yeah. It's
crunchy, but a little thin.
It's like it went straight from the pedal into the board.
It's all right. They take care of it though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like again, following a big debut, and the pressure's on for a sophomore album. So, sometimes you rise above it. Sometimes like, all right, well, we'll get it on the third try there.
Yeah, and they may have been even thinking too. The label screwed up on the first release, got it late, and they realized, man, if we would have released this when we had it done, and now they're kind of, let's get it done. It's 87, because you think about what's coming out there, and then that time, they're probably wanting to, feed the competition, Yeah.
And we've almost got Chuck Schuldiner starting a whole new wave of metal that's going to become.
Yeah.
So yeah, Rush.
Yeah. So naturally, because their Exodus, they toured their fucking dicks off, toured with Anthrax, Celtic Frost, and even MOD, and went back to the studio in September of 1988. This time they tapped producer Mark Senesak, and actually Gary Holt would co-produce this next album. And on January 30th, 1989, they would release Fabulous Disaster.
Yes.
My number 2, they got it right. Like, this was the worthy follow-up to Bonded by Blood. All the violence, all the energy, but way more memorable songs. Like Last Act of Defiance right out of the gate is just a fucking barn burner. And of course you have the Toxic Waltz. They taught us a dance, a nice violent dance.
Everybody's doing the Toxic Waltz. You better do it too. Don't miss out. Don't miss out.
The mix, grittier, dirtier sounding. It's way more aggressive. Every song is pretty much like a punch in the fucking face, and I like the intensity, but it's intensity with hooks. I just think the riffs just sink in deeper this time. Like, no production woes, and the songs just stand out. Yeah, you get some extra stuff, like the goofy cover of Lowrider is, I don't know, maybe unnecessary, but kind of fun. But I like the little bluesy start to Cajun Hell. It's like, like ZZ thrash. It's just a fun album, and like, I want to say, like, you look at the album cover, it's like, yeah, this is Pizza Thrash. Like, could be.
Before Pizza Thrash, though.
But yeah, like, you have to fight someone first, and then you get the pizza.
Yeah.
But this is
only
Exodus.
the winner gets the pizza.
Yeah.
It's fair.
They might get a beer, too. I don't know.
Yeah, they should have a beer.
But yeah, number 2, this is an absolutely badass album.
This is also my number 2. This is perfect. Well, not perfect per se, but this is definitely a much vast improvement from the previous album, and honestly, I think one of their strongest outputs. Steve is finally settled in. Yeah. I think he sounds much more comfortable in his deliveries, and now that he's writing the lyrics full time, I don't know. I don't mind Steve's lyrics a lot. Paul had some interesting lyrics too, but
he loved metal tropes.
Yes.
Like all right, we have to thrash and murder, punch.
Yeah. So I think Steve sounds settled in. The production's right on. The songs have much more character than the previous album. There's much more memorable parts, memorable riffs, and yeah, it's fucking killer. Number 2.
I had it number 3. A banger of an album. What do you want? The last act of Defiance just slaps you in the face right from the rip. I think that pretty much the whole album is just a slap to the face. Just like, all right, well, may not be everything you wanted on the album before it, so here we are back again, full force, doing what we do best. The song Corruption just makes me want to shoulder check somebody into a wall.
Violence.
I think that's where they were at. Even again, at this point, I'm not 100% sold on Zetro, but
I like Zetro.
I think he sounds better on this. Actually,
he does sound better on this than he did on the record prior.
In terms of vocal performances, this is probably my favorite one from him.
Verbal Razors, that song's out
Verbal
to get
Razors
you.
is awesome.
Yep, out to get you. Just the intensity on this album again, and just bringing back thrash to whoop your ass. That's where we're at.
I had it at 5, and it could be like switched with my number 3 or my number 2. Well, maybe not my number 2, but it could be switched with my number 3. I had it there originally, but
things happen.
Things happen. Things happen. And the singer's getting in there. Now he's in his groove. I don't mind his vocals at all.
I don't either. I like Zetro.
Yep. Toxic Waltz, of course, is a classic. Fabulous Disaster is one of my favorite songs by them, and I didn't care for Lowrider. But it's probably because I love the original. That's one of my favorite jams, man. And it was like, this isn't very good. So yeah, I'm just going to have to go with number 5, just because, like I was saying, these guys, for me, have aged well, and some of the later albums I like.
Like a fine wine.
So naturally, because it's Exodus, they tore their asses off, but they did run into a roadblock. Unfortunately, Tom Hunting was diagnosed with an irregular heartbeat during their tour with this and was forced to quit the tour and leave the band so he could recover. Perry Strickland of Violence actually would fill in on the tours for drums, and they signed an even bigger contract. They signed to Capitol Records and kind of got on a giant one. I mean, that's a pretty established record label. But they needed a drummer. So through a recommendation from Charlie Benigni of Anthrax, he told them, hey, my drum tech, John Tempesta, is a solid fucking drummer. And they auditioned him, and he ended up getting the job. So they went back to the studio once again in December of 1989, working once again with Mark. And Gary and Rick would also work with him co-producing this new album. So on June 21st, 1990, they released Impact is Imminent. This is my number 4 album. First off, I have to say, you sign a major label deal, and you think, all right, they're going to fucking sell out, they're going to fucking write a little turd of an album, just be mass-produced little nugget of everyone's going to love this bullshit. They didn't. They wrote probably the heaviest album of their career. And I think it kind of irked some people, at least in terms of the front office, because they wanted them to write something a little bit more accessible. But fuck that. This album is just a ripper of an album. Pretty much on the same token as like Fabulous Disaster, except maybe a little bit more serious and just a little bit more biting. The first 2 tracks in here are a super aggressive start to it. Lunatic Parade. The riff on there is almost the same caliber as March the SOD and kind of similar, but still really good. Tempesta does a solid job on drums. It's a little bit groovier. There's a little bit more like, breakdowns in it. It's just a really fucking heavy, aggressive album, and I think it's one of the most underrated. Like, I saw that this album gets like kind of shit on in terms of reviews, and I listened to it like multiple times. I've been listening to this album for years, and I was like, I don't get it. It sounds like a thrash album, but that's just me. This is my number 4. I think this is honestly the most underrated one in their discography.
I did number 8. I kind of disagree. First of all, the mix is compressed as balls, but I mean, it's the beginning of the 90s, so I mean, that's kind of where we're at. The lyrics are all kind of goofy, but I mean, what are you going to do? In my opinion, the first 4 songs I just kind of zoned out to, which I didn't think was really great talking point wise, but I just kind of zoned out, and I was like, oh, I'm still jamming an album. But then it gets to stuff with like Objection Overruled. Only Death Decides is an absolute ball puncher of a song. There's some great energy, but it's just not at the top for me.
I'm kind of where he's at, number 9 for me. I didn't care for the recording. I don't know what it was exactly, but I didn't care for it too much.
It's compressed.
The compression is a little over, but it's 90, so it's getting there. But I mean, Heads They Win, Tails You Lose. That's one of my favorites off of here. The thrash Under Pressure is impressive.
I like that
song. I really like that song.
Mm-hmm.
It's like just balls to the wall the whole way. And it's only number 9. I mean, it's Exodus, so they're all good.
I did have an issue with like some of the recording. Like it seemed like one guitar was a lot louder than the other one, especially when they isolated
there
them.
just wasn't a lot of to the guitar.
Right, the crunch was gone.
Well, there was
like,
a lot to one guitar. It was probably Gary's.
I mean,
that's my guess.
I mean,
the guitars on Exodus albums are usually like the staple of the sound, and this wasn't it. On this album,
even though it's Gary Holt's favorite batch of riffs ever.
Yep.
Yeah,
the riff
he loves the riffs on this one.
The riffs they're fucking awesome.
Yep.
But it was just the guitars were just, I don't know, it was just flat. They just didn't have any gonads to them.
Yeah, this is my number 8 as well. Going back to what they said, there are some of Gary Holt's nastiest riffs on this album, but a lack of proper production, both in my opinion, in the instruments and the vocals. I don't, even being a Steve fan, I don't really care for the vocals on this album. If the material possibly were remastered, perhaps it would go higher for me. But as it sits currently, it's a decent batch of songs. It's got some excellent moments in it. It just, the cake wasn't cooked properly, for me at least. And so that's kind of why it fell to number 8 for me.
So as you can see, kind of a divisive album, and honestly, it did not perform well as their major label debut. But they still had the contract with Capitol Records, and they were due for another album, and, well, winds of change were already blowing through. Bassist Rob McKillop left the band in 1991. He was replaced by Mike Butler in 92. And pretty much to buy some time in between Impact is Imminent and the new album, they released a compilation, Lessons in Violence, and a live album, Good, Friendly, Violent Fun, which that definitely describes Exodus live. Now this new album would be different. Now, because all right,
a little bit.
Let's just get this out there. In 1991, Metallica may have changed the face of metal with the Black Album, and then kind of all the heavy bands.
He says with total disdain in his voice.
Because this spawned a fucking horrible trend of really good heavy bands trying to write watered down radio metal, and it happened here. Yeah. Unfortunately. So for this new album, they would get producer Chris Sangarides. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but
Chris Sangria.
Sorry.
He worked with a lot of notable acts: Bruce Dickinson, Black Sabbath, Halloween, Judas Priest. Bigger producer, and I guess with lofty ideals for the band, because on August 17th of 1992, they would release Force of Habit, which is dead fucking last. What the fuck happened? I look at this album cover like, what the fuck happened to the logo? What the fuck happened on the artwork? Did some kid draw this?
What the fuck happened to Exodus?
What the fuck happened to everything? This was the band that I counted on for violence, and they put out this long, pedestrian, boring-ass album. This is, well, Gary's least favorite. He doesn't like this album at all, and I don't either. I don't think any of us did. It's just a long listen of just watered down songs. Like, there's some decent moments in songs, but I don't think there's an entire song in here that I would want to listen to. And I'm going to go back to one of my favorite points of time, which was back before I listened to this again, and kind of latch on to that feeling, because, God, man, this was horrible to go through. This is like a huge fall from grace. Like, there's not much that's really good on here. Like the Pump It Up cover, originally done by Elvis Costello, that might be one of the shining moments on here. And that's sad, because that isn't a song that they wrote.
In short, Nick fucking hates this album.
I don't like this album, man.
I don't either, and it's also at number 11. Really, I think this album should have been called At Least There's Leads? Question mark? Because there's not a whole lot going on. It's longer, far longer than it needs to be. The mix is even lesser than the one prior to it.
Gary kept his tone.
It's muddy, and parts of Architect of Pain are good, or Architect in Pain. Parts of it are good, but overall, I'm in pain. It lost everything. This record blows.
Yeah, it's just not a good album. Like, I've tried to give this one a chance, and I own it. Like, this is in the collection. So, yeah, I bought it. I ate shit on that one. But, what do you think, Shred?
I think that eating shit is a proper analogy. To me, this is Exodus just trying to be a band that they really weren't, and it absolutely shows. While they are capable musicians, and they were able to come up with some maybe newer, more modern things, it just ain't it, man. I know what's it.
This ain't it.
This ain't it. And for that reason and that reason alone, dead last, man. Every other Exodus album is by far better.
Yeah. If Gary don't like it, there's a good chance I won't.
I had a 10, almost dead last. But yeah, everything you guys said, I thought. And, I mean, Fuel for the Fire stands out. If there was one that stands out.
There's not much fire
Has
in
a
here.
ripping lead.
Like, and I noticed, that
At least there's
there.
leads.
Yep, at least there's
Question
leads.
mark.
Question mark?
And me, myself, and I is where I noticed the bass is like clipping out. And it just drives me insane after I notice that. And that's all I hear. So,
Like I said, they were lost, the whole thrash scene was kind of dying out at that point. You had to fucking make adaptations.
Something.
And there were bands that did do well. Like, all right, fucking Countdown to Extinction. I think that's a great fucking album. Testament's the Ritual. Yeah, they compromised a little bit and mainstreamed it up, but it was still a really good album. This, man, I don't know what the fuck happened. But it happened for a long time on this album because it's 76 minutes long. And it's not interesting at all.
It is not it, my friend.
I much like Shred here, I know what's it, and this is not it.
So again, in short, Nick fucking hates this album.
It's not good. So again, with the changing musical landscape, and grunge would be taking over, and then there would be a groove metal trend, Exodus was kind of not doing well. And with the behind-the-scenes tensions, because the band really wasn't kind of gelling very well with the new sound and kind of new image. I mean, they kind of softened just about everything. But they ended up breaking up in 1993. Now, Gary and Tom would actually get back together and form a band called War Dance and only released one demo in 94. But it was during that time in War Dance that they met bassist Jack Gibson, who would become important later. John Tempesta would end up joining Testament and record Low, and then he would get a pretty solid break and be the drummer for White Zombie for the album Atrocity 2000. So years later, in 1997, Gary, Tom, and Rick would actually reunite with Paul Bailoff and actually do some tours again. And it was during this time that they brought in bassist Jack Gibson to kind of round out the lineup. And that actually sparked some interest in Exodus again. They actually managed to sign a small deal with Century Media Records and release Another Lesson in Violence, which was a live album and pretty much just featured a one-off show that they did. And again, it kind of got the whole interest in Exodus going. But there ended up being a dispute with the label, mainly between Gary and the label, and they ended up breaking up due to the pressures of that. And, once again, bands, take a lot of work to get going again.
Sure.
So they took some more time off, and then in 2001, they ended up reuniting once again for a cancer benefit for Chuck Billy and Chuck Schuldiner. And it was at this point they really sat down and was like, dude, I think we should do this again. Like, this really feels right. But, sadly, February 2nd of 2002, Paul Bailoff suffered a massive stroke and sadly died. And really sucks because, again, the fucking mascot of thrash metal, he kind of embodied the spirit, and it seemed like they were getting the reels rolling and getting back to work. And, they lost a dear friend. But despite the tragedy, Gary was determined. He was like, dude, I still feel it. I feel the itch to record music. I want to write music again. I want to bring Exodus back. So they reached out to another old singer of theirs, Zetro. They ended up signing a deal with Nuclear Blast Records, where they reside currently, and tapped one Andy Sneap to do production for him, which, Andy Sneap is kind of all over thrash metal. Like, pretty much if you're an old thrash band...
It was a good move.
Yeah, he's probably producing your album right now.
Right.
So on February 2nd, 2004, the 2-year anniversary at that point of Paul Bailoff's death, they released Tempo of the Damned. This is my number 7 album. This is a fucking good return to form. Fortunately, there are some better albums that I like, at least in my opinion, but this is the spirit of Exodus just coming out. Star Spangled Banner, War is My Shepherd, Blacklist. Like, Blacklist is almost a guaranteed one you'll hear live. And that song fucking rips.
I did too.
Oh, dude, it's just nasty. The biting energy was back. The snarl was back. Zetro sounds even more fucking harsh on here. And I think this is where his vocals start to move up a little bit, which is kind of odd because
I think this is one of his best performances.
He sounds maniacal. Like, he sounds vicious.
Spirit of Paul lived in.
Yeah, there's definitely the spirit. I think these songs were written with Paul in mind, and Zetro came in and
the whole thing is intense.
You get some big hardcore breakdowns on the song "Throwing Down," which that just was another vicious one. And I think there's a little bit of a carryover sometimes. Like, there's some groovier songs on there that kind of have like the more accessible riffs and kind of like Pantera-ish riffs you heard on Force of Habit. But all in all, I think this is a really solid album, and this is exactly what they needed to do. Just come back swinging and reestablish the brand, and fuck yeah, they did.
This is my number 4 album. I love this album. First of all, for whatever reason, I usually love comeback albums. And this is a great comeback album, and Tom Hunting fucking tears it up. His first album back, he tears it up, and this is their winning formula. It's fucking heavy, it's aggressive, it's fast, it's fucking thrash, man. And it had that modern Andy Sneap metal production. So you combine that two, and I thought it was a recipe for fucking excellence. I really love this album. I love War is My Shepherd. I love the title track. Just fucking killer. And once again, being a Zetro fan, I thought his vocal performance on here might be the strongest out of all Exodus albums. Maybe one later that I feel like is just as strong. The newest one's pretty damn good. But regardless, I love Temple of the Damned, and number 4.
I fucked up. I didn't pay the greatest of attention, I guess, to my notes when I wrote the ranking, and I had this at number 10, which is stupid because I shouldn't. Because again, I think it's one of Zetro's finest vocal performances. Welcome back, Tom Hunting. I fucking love Tom Hunting.
He's such a good dude, too. I know I said that already.
He is.
Yeah, the mix doesn't sound like a compressed bag of duck shit. I mean, it's actually firing on all cylinders for a comeback album. So even though it's 10, don't listen to me because I'm stupid.
We know.
War is My Shepherd, Sealed with a Fist. I mean, really, I could name all the songs off this album. But yeah, I fucked up. So it's number 10, but I fucked up.
But he's man enough to admit that.
But I'm man enough to admit that I fucked up.
And for all the reasons he had it at 10, I had it at number 1. He mentioned all of my stuff here.
Oh, my bad. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
I'm sorry, I'm an asshole.
For me, it's like, I love all the little Gary Holt things he does. The slides and the little off time and the half beats and coming in on a half. And he's just awesome.
Yeah.
And Tom Hunting's awesome. And then you put it together with a producer who knows what he's doing, and you get awesome. You get what John said.
There seems to be like a love-hate thing with Andy Sneap here lately. There are people that absolutely love his production, and there are people that are absolutely just sick of it because it's kind of like a little universal across the board. Yeah. I mean, he has the same settings for every band.
Buy the Sneak Tone Pack, $59.99.
But it works.
It's probably out there, yeah.
And it definitely worked on this one.
And that's why Terry Date stuff works.
Yeah.
There's certain producers that have their stuff dialed in, and it works. So
I think Terry Date turns more knobs than Andy Sneap, but that's just
real knob turner.
So Temple of the Damned got a lot of praise, both from critics and from fans. It actually was kind of lumped in there with a big thrash revival movement that actually happened in the early to mid 2000s with bands like Municipal Waste and Evil. Thrash became kind of popular again. It kind of died out in favor of nu metal. Yeah, we fucked up. And groove metal. We fucked up less there maybe. And metalcore. Debatable as to whether or not we fucked up. I still like some metalcore.
I think they fucked up.
But thrash became king again. Now, unfortunately, because it's Exodus, there was a problem that arose. Zetro had to quit mid-tour, which definitely caused some tension in the band. But he had a day job that he actually had to do, and that pays the bills. Now, to round out the touring, they got Matt Harvey of Exhumed to do vocals on some of the dates, and then on other dates got Steve Esquivel of Defiance and Skin Lab to fill in on others. Now, at this point, we are introduced to our third singer. Rob Dukes becomes the new frontman in 2005, and I know there's kind of a love-hate relationship with him. in terms of the vocalists. You know, when the band has multiple vocalists, you definitely become fans of one versus the other. That's kind of the thing. But another wrinkle came in because Tom, once again, had to leave due to medical reasons and was not able to be on this new album, so they recruited one Paul Bostaph, formerly of Slayer, formerly of Forbidden, and yeah, you got a good fucking drummer again. But of course, we're not done with members leaving because Rick Hunold would actually leave to focus on his family, so Gary approached one Lee Altus of Heathen, and that is now the dynamic duo in Exodus because Lee is like the perfect complement to Gary Holt.
Yeah, no offense to Rick, but
he's a good guitarist.
Lee is an upgrade in my eyes for sure.
Now, all of this was going on while they were writing and recording this new album, and yeah, it's enough to make this next one pretty fucking angry just because of all the shit that was going on. Now, this one would actually be mostly produced by Gary himself, but also with Andy Sneap to mix and master. And on October 4th, 2005, they would release Shovel-Headed Kill Machine. This is my number 8, and this is a pretty decent album. It's a very aggressive album. Like, it pretty much takes the aggression that was already on Tempo of the Damned and kind of amps it up, but adds like a hardcore bite. Mainly because Rob Duke's vocals are definitely more on the hardcore side. He's got a gruff, just fucking mean delivery. It's not that sort of, well, Zetro-ish. It doesn't sound like Paul Bailoff. It's just kind of, you know, a hardcore in-your-face dude. And he looks like he should have that voice with the large scar across his face, which he got in a bar fight, I believe. So, yeah, he's literally perfect for Exodus. Virtually the same production. I mean, it's Andy Sneap again, it's kind of the same. I think the guitars might be a little bit more chunkified on this, and while I like really heavy guitars, there were some points and there was like, man, you might just need to dial this back a little bit because it started kind of bleeding into the riffs. They became like less distinguishable, but this album has some legit bangers. Raise was the first one I heard and I was like, okay, I like this new guy. And then I heard Death Amphetamine, which you'll still hear live because that is an absolutely killer song and is
sounds
just
like fucking Slayer.
Dude, it's just
all day.
Vicious. And the addition of Lee Altus in there, the lead trade-offs I think became even more dynamic, and honestly I think they get even better along the line. But this is a decent album. Like, I really like this one, but again, there's others I like more. And again, kind of growing pains and all the shit that was going on behind the scenes, you know, they came out with a pretty decent album here.
I had this at 11. This probably switched around with 10, but Death Amphetamine, love that one. Solo's badass, but I found myself like just dialed in. Like I said, the guitars are pretty overpowering over it, which is great, but I love it. But that's all I listen to, so therefore, like, the other stuff just didn't seem Exodus to me, if that makes any sense. And maybe because of all those changes and stuff like that, but the guitars were dialed in, and I appreciated it for that. But as a whole album, it just fell.
I have number 7. Really, I have minor gripes about this album, to be honest. Welcome, Rob Dukes. Goodbye, Zetro. I'm okay with that. I love Paul Bostaph anyway. The kick drum I thought was a little bit clicky and paper thin, but what are you going to do? Outside of that, though, I like the fact that I think this album focused more on dynamic than anything. Like, they definitely added, there's some hardcore groove, there's some thrash, the solos are pretty good, but the overall songwriting and structure, I think, was a lot better than it had been in the past.
They definitely write like longer songs too. Like, you know, There's a lot more movements going on.
Of course, Death Amphetamine, the triplet chugs and Going, Gone. Yeah, I mean, I thought this was just a good pick-me-up.
I have this at number 10. I'm sure Rob Dukes is a nice guy. He's not my guy. I'm a Zetro dude, and nothing personal, but this album fell really flat for me because of Rob Dukes. I felt like he played it very safe and very vanilla, on top of the fact that I'm not really crazy about his hardcore delivery style, and I just prefer my thrash Bon Scott to my, I don't know, hardcore vocalist. And it's just a preference thing. While this album is chock full of air guitar moments, nothing but air guitar moments, man.
Yeah.
If this was a Bill and Ted movie, it would be nonstop air guitar, which I love. But for me, so many other Exodus albums just take the cake. And yeah, like I said, I'm not really a Rob Dukes guy anyway, so for me, this is just almost last.
There were a lot of comparisons with this album that they drew to Machine Head. And I think those comparisons would kind of keep going. Like, you know, just in terms of the change of vocalists, right, and the longer, more lavish songs instead of straight-ahead thrash songs. So, I don't know, like, coupled with the fact with all the lineup changes that happened on this one album, I mean, they came up with a pretty decent album, but I could see where this one would be divisive. So naturally, of course, they did a lot of touring. They also made their first trip to Australia during this run. Now, Tom Hunting would return to the band in March of 2007, just in time to record the new album. Bostaph would end up joining Testament for their big comeback album, Formation Damnation, which, well, again, see the Testament ranking because we fucking love that album too, but we love almost all of their albums. So, yeah, another tough ranking. Now, this one, I guess you could say would be a little bit different just because this would be part one of a conceptual album. I guess you could say it's conceptual. At least it's a two-parter. Once again, Andy Sneap would return to do the production on this, and October 28th, 2007, they would release the Atrocity Exhibition, Exhibit A. This is my number 10. There are songs that I absolutely fucking love on this album, but as a whole, this album is just kind of okay. The first three tracks, after you skip the intro, which is, I mean, it's an intro, of course I'm going to fucking skip it. Riot Act, Funeral Hymn, and Children of a Worthless God are legit bangers. Like, actually, Funeral Hymn might be one of my favorite Exodus songs of all time. Mother of God, that opening chug.
That stomper riff. Dude.
Oh, like literally, you could punch a hole straight to the center of the fucking earth listening to that. But towards the end of the album, it kind of just seems to fall off the rails. Like, the title track gets a little odd. They start squeezing in more like atonal riffs and distant riffs, and I like those, but maybe not in Exodus. These songs were, I guess you could say, like, more experimental. Like, they wanted, again, to kind of expand on the longer songs and make them a little bit more lavish, but in terms of holding my interest, not many. In fact, I didn't really get back in until the last track, Iconoclasm, which I thought was cool because it has a clever tie-in to the beginning of the next album. But outside of that, this album, again, it has some tracks that I absolutely adore, but overall as a whole, it's just okay.
This is my number 9. Pretty close to what Necrotic said. There is good moments in this album, but for as long as it is, there's nowhere near enough variation in the music to keep my interest. And that was a big deal to me. I appreciate the fact that they wanted to go for a more modern approach, and they continued to push that way with Andy Sneap and the production. And not that they were on a bad track, but it just wasn't the track that I thought they should. They could have cut this album in half, probably.
Yeah.
They could have cut this album in half, and it probably would have been way higher on my list, honestly. But just some of those things combined kind of keep it down for me. And I will give Rob Dukes credit, though. I think that he did much better this time around than he did on the previous album.
Yeah, production was a bit better, too.
Number 7, and kind of along what all of us is saying. And the only thing really is there's just not much that stands out besides the first, like, 3. Like you said, after you get over the intro part of that. Iconoclasm, I like that song. That's a juggernaut of a song for me. And I do like that it ties into the next one. But overall, it's just these moments or a song that is good, but the other parts just, like you said, fall flat.
Yeah. They do a hidden track thing, and I fucking hate hidden tracks.
Yeah.
Like, let's have 6 minutes of fucking silence. Oh, here's a bonus track. I don't care. Oh my god, just stop with it. Make it a separate fucking track. Sorry.
I had this at number 4. I actually don't know what you guys are talking about, and that's fine. And there was no silence when I listened to the album on Spotify. They cut all that shit out, so I didn't have to wait 10 minutes of silence.
That's what you kids get when you stream. You don't get the real experience.
Not that Bostaph was a bad drummer whatsoever and didn't do this band justice, but welcome back, Tom fucking Hunting.
Dude,
I love Tom Hunting.
Tom Hunting's
You know who he
shit.
reminds me of? Scott Travis from Judas Priest, man.
Kind of, yeah. Riot Act makes me want to accost a pinata. Funeral Hymn, goddamn that stomper riff, dude.
It's in my head now.
I think Enforced took a page out of that fucking song. I really do. The Atrocity Exhibition. I want to talk about this most specifically because I first jammed this song when I was house sitting for his mom while they were away, and it was like 11:30 in the morning, and I'd just gotten off work, and I had a cup of coffee and some herbs, dude, and before I knew it, I was stomping around the kitchen, air drumming and playing guitar, and all the dogs were looking at me like, what the fuck is wrong with this dude? The drum work on Iconoclasm is top-notch. Bedlam 1. I think that song slaps from beginning to end. I had a great time with this album, so that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
It's super front-loaded, at least for me. But, I mean, honestly, it's still fucking really good.
I mean, it's Exodus. I mean, it's all really fucking good.
Well, except for Force Habit. Don't.
Except for one album.
That's the one.
Just
don't.
Except
Just
for
don't.
one shit the bed record. Yeah.
So naturally, because it's Exodus, fuck ton of touring ensued. Now, 1 year later, they would release a complete re-recording of Bonded by Blood called Let There Be Blood. Gary just wanted to hear his classic album with modern production. Of course, it was probably Annie Sneap. I didn't check because I don't care about this album. Don't re-record your classics.
Right, it's such a banger of a fucking album in the first place.
You gotta,
I didn't need to hear it remastered, dude.
No.
It was fucking good the way it was.
You know, it's just there. It's unnecessary, it's unneeded, and we're skipping it. So we're going to go right back to what they were doing well and, you know, writing their own music that they hadn't written before.
To sum it over, Nick fucking hates it.
That's the short version. That's the abridged version.
Sure.
Don't re-record your shit!
Gary can do whatever he wants.
All right, we love you, Gary, but not that one. Do like Pleasures of the Flesh. So naturally, they went back to Andy Sneap because, well, Andy Sneap does the production on all the other albums, and again, if you're an older thrash band, he's doing the production on your album. Just, you know, embrace it. You haven't called him yet, but he's waiting by the phone. So this next exhibition would continue to focus on the longer songs, more lavish songwriting, and dark socio-political themes, which, man, they got really good at those. So on May 7th, 2010, they would release Exhibit B, The Human Condition. This is my number 3 album, and I don't know if this is a spicy take, but holy shit, this album just fucking rips. Now, it's longer, and the songs are longer, but there is something about this album where it's foot on the gas almost the entire time, and all the rage just seems directed, like focused as fuck. Everything they missed, at least in my opinion, on Exhibit A, they got right on this one. This is tight fucking songwriting. Ballad of Leonard and Charles, Beyond the Pale, March of the Sycophants. These songs fucking just whoop ass. This has a fast pace, and again, despite the longer songs, they're interesting. They keep the adrenaline up, and I like the kind of old school thrash spirit in there, but also with the more modern production and even some more modern songwriting. Dukes owns on this one too. This is his best vocal performance. I think he fucking shines on this one, and to all the Dukes haters, yeah, listen to this album again. This is a damn good album. I still don't get why the guy gets a lot of hate, but this album right here, he owns.
You will listen.
Or Dukes will show up at your house and fight you. I don't know if you want to take that fight. That's
gonna get a scar across the face going the other way.
Yeah, man. I don't know if he won that bar fight or not, but I mean, he's still standing, so that's something.
It's my number 6. Thought it was a decent album for sure. Good follow up to Exhibit A. I still like Exhibit A a little bit more. Maybe it's the lesser of the more modernized production, but I kind of like that.
I just feel like your return of your boy Tom.
Well, first of all, I think this is Tom Hunting's best. I think this is Tom Hunting's best album yet at this point. Like, he puts on a fuck of a performance. March of the Sycophants is a banger of a song.
The Sun is My Destroyer too. Features one Peter Tägtgren of Hypocrisy, and well, we always like when he shows up on an album, and that song is a fucking ripper too.
Although I think that song drags a bit.
Yeah, I thought it dragged.
Yeah, well, the hook may be stuck in my head. It just drags a bit. Not a big deal.
Dragging the hook across the meat, that's metal.
I'm a fan of all the Exodus instrumentals. I think it's a great idea, and I like that they kept them running. A perpetual state of indifference. I love that snare cadence that's in there with that epic sounding down-tempo groove, and then it transitions so well into good riddance. Yeah, it's still a great album. I just like A better.
And mine is also 6, and pretty much what you said. Downfall really stands out to me on this album. And they're just from Exhibit A to B, it's like they're gelling together better for me, and it's going in the right direction. Like I said, with me, these guys just got better with age as their albums keep going in the later stages here.
This is my number 3. I agree with Necrotic. This was what Exhibit A was supposed to be. The longer songs held your attention. The production was right on with the style of music, and Rob Dukes gives his best performance of his entire Exodus career here, and it's just fucking disgusting. Everything from Gary's lightning fast riffs to Tom Hunting's double bass. You got Lee in here now ripping solos too, and it's a beautiful thing, and I don't think I can keep it all in. 3, please. Thank you.
So naturally, once again, because I said this in between every album, they toured their asses off, actually getting opening slots for Rob Zombie, Slayer, and even did the Rust in Peace anniversary tour with Megadeth.
That would have been sick.
That probably was sick. I remember when I saw that. Now, it was around this time that Gary began filling in Slayer for Jeff Hammond, who was suffering from the spider bite that he had. And that would kind of cut into time with Exodus in terms of getting back together and recording a new album. And that became even more difficult when Jeff Hammond sadly passed in 2013, which he still sorely fucking missed.
Rest well, sir.
Gary Holt became his replacement, and literally on the short list of people that could do it, Gary was probably at the top of it. But Exodus is a fucking machine, and they were already writing new material. They were already touring. They got Craig Lum of Heathen to actually fill in for Gary on tour. And they managed to return to the studio in March of 2014, of course, with Andy Sneap, because...
why not?
It's Andy Sneap. So on June 8th, Rob Dukes decides it's time to exit the band, and he is replaced once again by Zetro Suso, who had mended fences with Gary Holt. Dukes moved on to his band Generation Kill, and they pretty much got to work and recorded their new album, which came out on October 10th, 2014, called Blood In, Blood Out. This is my number 6. This is definitely a return to the more familiar Exodus if you're an older fan. The songs are shortened down and possibly even more hostile. Zetro, again, his vocals kind of changed a little bit. They got higher and a little bit more shrill occasionally.
He sounds like a pissed off Care Bear.
Yeah, he sounds, I don't know, like kind of gremlin-ish in some of these songs. But on other songs, he sounds just visceral and biting. So again, I kind of have this like hit or miss thing with Zetro, but he delivers a snarling vocal performance on this one. Like when you listen to the high screams on Salt the Wound, like he is really pushing himself to sound even more feral than before. But again, this is kind of back to the familiar territory of the older Exodus, just with modern production. The riffs are fucking vicious, the songs are fucking fast. The title track is an absolute fucking ripper. It's probably my favorite track on there, next to Collateral Damage, and I have to say BTK with fucking Chuck Billy on there on vocals, adding his nasty growls. Vicious fucking songs. It's a pretty solid album. Like I said, again, this is like that middle area where like, shit, like this is kind of hard to rank, but this is a damn good album. And I mean, if you're an Exodus fan, there's a good chance you already own it. The only thing I have an issue with is maybe the weird industrial sort of intro to it, which that's Dan the Automator, which is, yeah, that's just kind of an interesting guy to be on a thrash album. But yeah, overall, pretty good album.
I rated number 9. I mean, at this point in the game, it's tough to keep finding numbers. To me, this album, I think, lost a lot of the previously growing dynamic that they had, and it just had one uniformed idea: let's play thrash. And that's what they did. You know, for me, I think this record is great for just the background, really. I mean, there are a lot of cool songs, but, like, I found myself just kind of zoning out to it, just like, yeah, good. And every now and then I would come back in and be like, yeah, it's fucking good. Yeah, Zetro sounds like a pissed off Care Bear. I'll never... I don't.
What would be his logo on his chest?
I don't know.
A fist.
A fist,
what do you
maybe?
mean, brass knuckles?
And it was funny. When I was jamming this, I said, boy, BTK really sounds like Testament. And then I read, of course, the notes online and found out that it was Chuck Billy, so that makes total fucking sense.
Andy Sneap also produces a lot of Testament albums, too.
I did think that the production was a little thin, I thought, which was kind of bizarre. It wasn't bad, it just seemed to be a little thin.
So Andy Sneap actually did turn a couple of knobs, or like push something down. I don't know. One thing.
I like
just one.
I like the driving force of Body Harvest, but the lyrics are fucking dumb. Yeah, the Leads and Honor Killings, the Stomp Breakdown, and Food for Worms. They're all great songs. I just think it's number 9. That's where I'm at.
I had it at 2. Collateral Damage, Salt the Wound. I love those songs. That Stomp, the Breakdown you're talking about. I dug the album. I thought it was like, it's like a return to the older thrash of just barrel at it, but with the production quality of today. And I dug it. And maybe it just because the last couple albums of it just really dragged for me a little bit. I don't know. I liked it. I liked the production. I liked the balls to the wall feel of it. It's firing all cylinders. It's a great riffage.
I have this at number 6. I think this is a good middle-of-the-road album for them. Like John said, this is basically them getting back to one mode, and that's just thrash it up. And that's, in my opinion, maybe mostly due to the fact that Zetro hadn't been around for a while. So, maybe you can't get that crazy experimental with a guy that's been out of the fold for so long. So They stuck to the original formula, and they put out a solid album. There is definitely some good, solid songs on here. But to me, as a whole, it just kind of falls somewhere right in the middle. It's not the best,
Yeah.
and it's definitely not the worst. It's just
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
If it's on, I'm not turning it off. I'm headbanging. That's probably what I'm doing, actually.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's good to be in the background. It's still a killer fucking album. It's just kind of like there.
Yeah. Now, Blood In, Blood Out sold really well. They actually achieved their highest chart position to this point in terms of the band. And they were ready to strike when the iron's hot. They started writing pretty much as soon as 2016. Now, of course, again, it was delayed due to Gary Holt's commitments in Slayer. And, Excess having a tour with Craig and Lum to, fill out the dates for all this. So, again, it's just sort of a, tough sort of combo there, but they were still trying to get back to the studio. Now, they did get back to the studio in September of 2020, but, by then, COVID had pretty much butt-fucked the entire world. And, again, more delays. Now, it was initially supposed to come out earlier in 2021, but another horrible fucking thing happened. Tom Hunting was diagnosed with cancer and had to begin treatment. Now, his outlook was positive, and he was committed to fucking kicking cancer right in the fucking dick, and the GoFundMe campaign helped out tremendously. We actually donated money to it because we fucking love you, Tom. You're a fucking beast, man.
Savage.
And, you're fucking Tom Hunting. That's already enough for me. So they pushed back the release of the new album to November 2021, and they wanted to make sure that Tom was going to be available to tour on this album because they were fucking ready. We were all ready for live music again at this point.
Oh, my God.
Losing our fucking minds. But on November 19th, 2021, they released Persona Non Grata. This is my number 5. Actually, Shred and I reviewed this one, and we were fucking stoked. And the singles had me interested. The beatings will continue until morale improves.
Yeah, dude.
That is straight and to the point. That is everything that Exodus is about. Most of the beatings.
If you mean until morale improves, it's hitting somebody with a flying chair. That's such a barn burner of a fucking song.
Should have caught the chair with your hands, not your face.
Yeah.
I think this album improves on what they were doing on Blood In, Blood Out. Like, Blood In, Blood Out, a very straightforward, thrashy album. It's there to reestablish the band. Hey, we're back with Zetro. We're doing the thrashy shit again. This one expands out, a little bit more dynamics. Opening track, the title track, is 7 minutes long, but fuck, it is just awesome. One of the heaviest tracks they've written. This song gives no fucks for an entire 7 minutes. But then at the same time, you have a more atmospheric and dark, foreboding track like Prescribing Horror, which honestly, I think that's up there again with another favorite Exodus song of mine. This album, we rated it a 3.5. I still kind of hold on to that, but I think it might be a little bit better after listening to it again. Zetro's vocals, again, kind of hit or miss, but I like the fact that he delivered some more low vocals on here. Those hardcore growls sounded even more intense. And, old dogs, new tricks, but honestly, this is just a whoop-ass album. It's just they wrote a lot of whoop-ass albums, so this one falls in the middle. But, yeah, kick-ass fucking thrash once again.
Yeah, this is my number 5 as well. Big improvement on Blood In, Blood Out. Not that it was bad, but I feel like personally now that Gary was done with Slayer, he was able to give his full-time love and attention to Exodus, and I think this album really showcases that. It's all over the place, and there's little bits of everything, but the main staple is still thrash. You got little bits here, but it never leaves Thrash Island, and it's fucking heavy and intense, and for guys that are in their 50s now, they're still fucking whooping ass. So, yes, kick-ass album.
Yep. I did number 5 as well. This album whoops ass. What a return to music after being silent for 7 years once again. For me, this is even the first time I think Zetro is decent, and I haven't said that during the whole fucking ranking. But he did a good job.
He's good.
Although you can still really tell the man likes AC/DC, but whatever.
That's all right. That's all right.
Yeah.
I love all 4 of their songs.
AC/DC. 5. Come on, man. 5.
Okay, all right, there's 5 AC/DC. All right, with that.
Again, with what Shred said, Gary Holt being done with Slayer and being able to fully commit himself to writing an Exodus record, Clickbait. Clickbait has Slayer written all over it.
Yeah.
Who
knows? Maybe it was from the Slayer sessions that didn't make the Slayer cuts from Repentless.
And Tom was battling cancer.
Right.
While he was beating
what a performance. Holy crap, dude.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, I think this record just fired on all cylinders again. It was something that I think they all were missing, and they came back and wrote a beast of an album. Just excellent. And if they hadn't, like you said, written so many other whoop-ass albums, this might be higher on the list. So,
And pretty much the reason you guys had it at 5 is why I have it at 3. And I could switch to 2 or 3, but really what we've established through this is you can take the first 5, top 5, and it's just a wash of just number ones, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, it's all a matter of just small tastes here and there. But the bottom line is Exodus should be a band that is in every collection, every playlist. You got to have a little Exodus in there. And if you don't, I don't know what you're doing.
It's been on the playlist in the background.
Yeah. I mean, we put on a thrash playlist. Guess how many times Exodus has shown up?
Like 4 or 5 times, yeah, so.
One of my most listened to bands, I think, in the mix when I thrash. I don't know. I listen to a lot of crazy shit, so.
It's Exodus. They're fucking awesome. And it's just cool hearing them this far into their career after all the shit they've been through.
Yeah.
Killing it.
Yep.
Delivering killer shit.
And they're not done. I don't think they're done.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah.
No.
Gary's videos, his Facebook videos are fucking awesome. Keep them coming, man. I'm watching every single one of them. Your Instagram or whatever the hell it is. I don't know. One of the social media.
Insta, you one of your damn kids' social media yoo-hoos.
Just get on Instagram to look at Gary Holt play. It's worth it. Just that. Just follow him, and that's it.
Get on YouTube and watch all of Exodus play recent shows.
Yeah.
Watch Gary Holt, and then watch us on YouTube.
I don't have to go to YouTube. Nick and I were there.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, you little
rascal me.
Yeah.
That tour was so good. You know what? Fuck, I'm just. Oh, look at that!
Right. The bass strikes back.
So good. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up Exodus's ranking. Again, I've been looking forward to doing this one because, I mean, I fucking love this band. This is just great fucking thrash. And honestly, listening to all this, all right, maybe minus Force Sabbath. I don't like that album. We established that. That was the only part I didn't like about this. The rest of it was like, dude, I love revisiting these albums. They're still so fucking good. And yeah, we're looking forward to doing more rankings in the future. And what are we doing next year?
Pantera, the mighty.
And no, we are not felons.
Not yet, right?
Right.
I mean, it seems only fitting we do Pantera. I mean, it's Pantera.
It's way overdue.
Yeah.
I mean, it is.
My favorite band.
I mean,
all time.
Possibly one of the biggest gateways for me in terms of metal with Pantera and Sepultura, Megadeth. I mean, there were a lot of bands, but Pantera was really high on the list. But looking forward to going over that one next. So, of course, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there'll be a link down below. When we get back from MDF, we're going to actually add some content that's going to be fun, and you guys get to have at us in a fun way. Don't worry, it'll be interesting. There's also a link down there to thrallsmetal.com if you'd like to get one of our kick-ass shirts. And there's also another link down there. Why don't you guys explain this one?
The Denver Death Fest. Woo! Us and Swinging Noose Productions doing the Denver Death Fest, September 30th, October 1st, October 2nd.
2022.
2022. Yeah, I didn't put a date in the original commercial, but
nope.
It was like, you didn't put a year. I was like, it's this year. The year we're in.
But we need to help explain things.
I know, I got it. I'm an old guy.
Yep.
But I got it.
And if you're in a band and you would like to submit your online press kit, go to denverdeathfest.com. We are still taking band submissions until the 15th of June. So, yep. There's also sponsorship opportunities if you'd like to do that. But yeah, Denver Death Fest is going to be a pretty huge fucking thing this fall. I'm very excited for it.
Yes. Yeah, we're very lucky and very excited to be a part of it.
Very lucky, very thankful. And to all the bands that have submitted so far. And there's some real fucking bangers on there.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Keep them coming.
Yeah, for sure.
And pretty much thank you again to everyone that has watched, liked, subscribed, followed, all that shit. You guys are the driving force behind this, that and the metal, but I mean, it's mostly you guys. But yeah, thank you all for watching once again, and we will catch you later.